We used to have an idea in this country that was called retirement. It was this sort of rosy idea that you could stop working someday, and you won't have to be a beggar for the rest of your life after you do. You'll have money to set aside to get you through your golden years, a nest egg. The whole idea of retirement essentially had three pillars to it. One of them was your pension. Once you're retired, you'd get a fixed payment from the entity you spent your life working for. The second pillar was your savings, money that you set aside for yourself over the years. And the third pillar was Social Security, the government-run retirement fund that you pay into your whole working life. Those are the three pillars: pension, savings, Social Security. That is what made the idea of retiring possible in this country. That is what made the prospect of getting old less scary than it otherwise would be. But what's happened to those three pillars over the last generation has been really good for one specific entity in America, but it has not been good for the rest of us. Take the first pillar, pensions. Pensions used to be the primary way your employer would help you plan for your retirement. Your monthly pension, once you retired, would be a fixed sum of money determined by things like the amount of years you worked at your company and your final salary when you finally stopped working. A pension was essentially a guaranteed nest egg. Does your company that you work for right now provide you with a pension? If you are like the vast majority of people now, the answer is no. In 1980, 30 million Americans in the private sector enjoyed a safe, secure pension provided by their employer. Look at what's happened to that number since 1980. The number of people with pensions has shriveled and shriveled and shriveled every single year. What has replaced the pension? Look at what's happened over the last generation. As pensions have steadily disappeared, they have been replaced by shiny new things called 401ks, the 401k system. And you know what? I'm just going to say it. 401ks are kind of a scam. Rather than having a safe, secure, guaranteed retirement in the form of a pension, 401k allows hardworking Americans to instead gamble your savings on Wall Street. 401ks are a way to turn your pension into an investment vehicle that is managed by Wall Street. So instead of a nest egg that is for you, that is free from the economic currents of the day, with any sort of guaranteed benefit, instead of that, your retirement fund gets sliced and diced and divvied up for Wall Street to play with. Whereas pensions, for the most part, used to be separate from the whole Wall Street banking/casino apparatus, 401k plans just put Wall Street right in the middle of the action, right between you and your retirement, which is by definition a risk-laden venture for the middle class. But it is a great windfall for Wall Street.
For millions of Americans, the most important investment of a lifetime is the 401k plan for retirement savings. But there's new research showing there could be hidden problems in your plan. The legislation to create 401ks passed in 1978. Now 40 million Americans have one. So what's the hidden problem?
In every portfolio, small, critics say hidden fees that by retirement can take a huge bite out of your profits.
I think very few people know much of anything at all about fees. They don't ask those kinds of questions.
Should they be asking? Experts say yes. 401k fees average less than 1%, but over the life of the account grow to major money.
The total cost to the American public is something in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 billion a year.
$1.5 to $2 billion a year right into Wall Street's pockets, just in fees. And that was back in 1997. What do you think it is now? A recent Department of Labor study guessed that Wall Street fees cost a worker 28% of the value of your plan over the span of your career. And so, yeah, the 401k system is kind of a scam that we've all been made to buy into as a replacement for pensions. We've all been sort of conned into putting our money into the stock market as a means of supposedly guaranteeing our future. If you wanted a guarantee, if you wanted security, would you go to Wall Street for it? What was once a strong pillar of our retirement has over the last generation turned into what's now essentially a slush fund for Wall Street. But there's always that second pillar, right? Personal savings. The idea of personal savings is that in addition to your pension, you could also just put money away over the course of your career, and it would be there when you retired. And that used to be the way it worked. In the 1970s and early 80s, the personal savings rate in America was pretty good. People were saving on average about 12% of their monthly disposable income. What's happened since then? What's happened over the last generation? Yeah. Americans stopped saving, not necessarily by choice, but rather as a result of what was happening to wages in America over that same time. Since 1980, the average income for the bottom 90% of Americans has really not gone up a whole lot. In fact, it has mostly stayed perfectly flat for a generation, even as the top 1% of income earners have seen their incomes skyrocket. So for one thing, if you're not making more money, you can't really save more money. But for another thing, saving money by sticking it in the bank, as your grandfather probably advised you, that has essentially been discouraged over the last generation by banking policies that mean that you can't earn any interest on money if you try to save it. Here's what's happened to the interest rates for bank deposits over the last generation. That's the interest rate that the bank pays you for letting them hold onto your money and loan it out. You used to be able to make some money off of saving, used to be able to make some interest. You were incentivized to put your money away, but not anymore. And so what do you do when you have disposable income that you'd like to turn into retirement money, but you can't make that happen by keeping it in a bank? How do you grow that money?
Tonight, the stock market on a roll. It is no longer just the playground of the rich and the risk takers among us. A survey now shows 43% of Americans are now investors. That is double the number just 7 years ago.
It's what some call the gold rush of the internet age. Individual investors online with the power of a broker in their own hands. Day traders, some of them doing it full time, like Richard Keynes.
In the morning, I'm able to buy a stock, turn around and sell it 15 minutes later, and you can cash out with $10,000 or $15,000.
The action is no longer just on Wall Street, but Main Street.
And when it works, it's awesome. And when it doesn't, the decline in the personal savings rate in our country has also ended up being a huge boon for Wall Street. Can't make your money grow by putting it in a bank anymore? Put it on Wall Street. See what happens. Pull the lever. The one pillar that we are left with, the one thing standing between retired Americans and the possibility of the breadline at this point is that last pillar that you see standing, Social Security. Social Security, which is now being attacked from the political right as a Ponzi scheme and a failure. And the only thing we can do to fix it is to let Wall Street get its hands on that one, too.
President Bush's second-term agenda, ambitious plans, including a pledge to partially privatize Social Security. It is a simple but controversial idea. Workers would be allowed to put a portion of their Social Security taxes into private accounts.
That could conceivably shift an enormous amount of new money into the stock market.
Yeah, the stock market where they need it. Privatizing Social Security, putting the money at the mercy of Wall Street, putting at the mercy of Wall Street the one pillar that we haven't yet allowed to be touched by Wall Street, has been the goal of the Republican Party for the last decade. It is a goal shared at the moment by the Republicans' current presidential frontrunner, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Handing Wall Street the one pillar that is left standing after an entire generation of Americans watched their retirements go up in smoke. What could possibly go wrong? As individual Americans have watched their retirements, or the possibility of retirement, eaten by Wall Street over the last generation, Wall Street itself has done great. In 1980, Wall Street profits as a percentage of all U.S. business profits were about 7%. 7% of all business profits in the country came from the financial industry. Want to see what's happened to that number since then? By about 2001, Wall Street profits had essentially eaten the business world. 41% of all business profits in the United States came from Wall Street. How's that worked out for the rest of the country? Since the Great Depression and the New Deal, we have had an idea as a country about how Americans will get old, how we will deal with that as a nation. Getting old may suck, but the alternative's worse. And our deal was that here in America, you are allowed to retire. You do not have to work until the day you die, and you do not have to become a beggar once your working days are over. For nearly a century now, that basic American dignity of an idea has rested on three pillars, two of which have already been surrendered to Wall Street, and one more that is dangerously close to being next.